My name is Hetty Richardson. I am the interim dean of the Neely School of Business. I'm so happy to be here with you tonight. I have to say, when I got up this morning and I looked at my calendar, I said, there are a lot of things between me and against all odds that I got to get through, but this is the thing that I have been looking forward to all day. So just as by way of general welcome and to kind of give a little bit of context about why we do this event in Neely and it's so important to us, I think at this point it's probably kind of a cliche to say that businesses operate in a time of incredible turbulence and uncertainty. But the reason why it's a cliche, people say it so often, is because it's true. And that means it's also true that if businesses are going to thrive in this kind of context, if they are going to face these challenges and succeed, and indeed if they're going to solve the problems that society face or help solve those problems, business as usual is no longer an option. We have to do things differently. And to me, part of what business not as usual means is that we have to bring all voices and all ideas to the table in terms of facing these challenges and solving these problems. But I also think it's really important to celebrate those who have faced these challenges and triumphed against them, and who have persevered against all odds, as it were. And so that's why Neely makes the promise that it does. Neely unleashes human potential with leadership at our core and innovation in our spirit. And what that means is we don't unleash potential for some people. The idea is to unleash potential for all people. That's how you get all those voices at the table. That's where you get the best ideas. And of course, that's also why it's so important to us to host this incredible series, Against All Odds. So I will now turn it over to Anne and let her tell you more about the Against All Odds series.
Thank you. Thank you, Dean Richardson. I am so excited to see everyone here today. I see a lot of familiar faces. I'm sure it has nothing to do with the extra credit. No. So I wanted to just give you some perspective on the work that we're doing in Neely and why the Against All Odds series was even designed. That's it. Our series was created to amplify diverse voices in business, and so that our students have the benefit of being exposed to leaders that are out there doing it. And as they encounter challenges, as all of us will at some point, they have managed to navigate those and still excel in their career. And so it's very important that you hear from those students today. From those professionals. And so we are delighted to have the leaders that we have here today. And we mixed it up today. We're talking about woman power today, right? So we're going to have our. We just had Hetty introduce us, and then we're going to have an all-female group today. So I'm super excited that we get to showcase a girl power today. And so I just hang on to your hat, because this is going to be a phenomenal conversation with a leader that is just doing amazing things. Rather than getting into that detail myself, I'm going to have our Inclusive Excellence Student Ambassador, Anaya White. She actually is part of our Neely Premier program. She's an honor student, and she's a student ambassador for our Inclusive Excellence. So Anaya, why don't you introduce our guest today?
Yes, thank you so much for that very kind introduction. I don't know about you guys, but I'm very excited tonight. I love the Against All Odds speaker series, but I think this one's going to be particularly interesting as we'll be hearing from an expert in the beauty industry, so definitely looking forward to that. However, enough about me. I am here with the honor to introduce the two speakers for this conversation. So first, I would love to introduce Ms. Tracy Renee Williams, who will be serving as the moderator of the conversation. She is a part of the board of trustees for TCU, and she is also the president of the TCU National Alumni Board. She is a frequently requested coach, facilitator, program designer, and keynote speaker across private and public sectors. And very recently, she has led some of the development and leadership efforts at Valence Enterprises, where she's established actually a peer community membership based for over 300 Black professionals who are going into executive roles. Next, I will be introducing our featured speaker of the night, Ms. Sheryl Adkins-Green. Now, Ms. Sheryl Adkins-Green is also a part of our Board of Trustees here at TCU, but she also led the search committee for appointing the inaugural TCU president, who is, of course, our very own Mr. Daniel Pullen, and she is the Chief Experience Officer at Mary Kay Cosmetics, where she leads the global strategy in creating this really superior customer experience that Mary Kay is so well known for. But I'll let her, of course, get into that. She is a highly awarded individual with honors such as being the first recipient of the Global Marketer Award in 2012 by the Academy of Marketing Sciences, and also by the Black Enterprise List for Most Powerful Women in Corporate America in 2019. She earned her master's in business administration from the Harvard Business School, and she's had years of executive leadership with companies such as Kraft Foods and Citigroup. So, with all that being said, I'd love to introduce to the stage Ms. Tracy Renee Williams and Ms. Sheryl Adkins-Green. Thank you.
And thank you all for being here for this conversation tonight. I am absolutely thrilled that I get to be a part of this discussion. This is something that has also been on my calendar, Dean Richardson, for a while, and I'm so excited to be able to have this conversation with Sheryl so that she can share her story with you in a way that is authentic and transparent and really gives you a glimpse into what her journey and what her path has been. So Sheryl, thank you for being here.
Truly my pleasure. I'm honored to be invited. I want to thank everyone who's here, particularly some of my other fellow trustees. I have one of my colleagues from Mary Kay and actually a former colleague from Kraft General Foods, so he's going to keep me honest.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And so we're just going to jump right into this conversation so that we can spend as much time as possible hearing about your journey and your accomplishments, successes, and even some of those, low points that we might go through when we're progressing in our professional careers. So I'd love if you could start out for us and just tell us about your journey. You are a C-suite executive at an iconic beauty brand. This is, we know Mary Kay in this room, right? So we'd like to hear where it all began, because we know that you had some stops along the way to entering the C-suite at Mary Kay.
Yeah, I actually credit my first Barbie for inspiring my love of fashion and design.
Love it.
It did lead to an early interest in fashion design that I then turned into the pursuit of retailing at the University of Wisconsin. As a part of that, certainly learned about business, leadership, how to achieve both the top line and the bottom line. I was headed to actually Leo Burnett in the ad agency business. Graduate school was a maybe, but a good friend of mine inspired me to apply to Harvard Business School, and I'm very proud that I was admitted directly from undergraduate school. It was a little intimidating, but I felt if they thought I was ready, then I believe I'm ready. So I had the opportunity to pursue my MBA at Harvard, worked at General Mills as a summer intern, and then pursued my early career in product management, had responsibility for P&L, worked across great categories, family favorites like stovetop stuffing, Fruity Pebbles. I'm the person who put the green in the Fruity Pebbles. If you're wondering who came up with that, it was me. But following a career in brand management, I was recruited to Citigroup and had an opportunity to broaden both my P&L as well as balance sheet management skills, work in a global organization, lead a large organization. Then I returned to packaged goods and ultimately in the beauty industry where I belong. Now I call it the beauty industry. Mary Kay really is a company about transformation. It's really about helping particularly women, but not exclusively women, understand how great they are. And I am so proud and honored that I get to support the success of millions of entrepreneurs around the world.
That is absolutely incredible. And I feel like we could have a whole conversation based on the nuggets you just dropped in that one answer. But I want to make sure that we are able to cover a lot of ground today. However, this idea around the transformation for women is something that I do want to double click on, because I feel like you represent that in so many ways by just telling us about your career journey and how you progressed to get to your position here at Mary Kay. So can you tell us a little bit more about some moments in time that contributed to that transformation for you and led to where you are today?
Yes, as I think about that question, I think the journey of transformation is a journey of discovery, and it's about discovering the power in really being my authentic self. And I'll be very candid. When I was first going through school and business school, I was looking around me trying to say, well, how should a Harvard MBA act? What would a Harvard MBA say? Even entering corporate America, I was looking around. And I found that just looking around wasn't actually propelling my career. And it was an opportunity I took advantage of. The president of the company had given a talk to the whole organization, and I wrote him a note and said how inspired I was. And long story short, he said, wow, no one ever just writes me like that. And I was pretty junior in the organization, but it allowed me the opportunity to be visible, to let him know that I wanted to support his vision for the company. He invited me to be on a special task force, which was a great experience and exposure. But the lesson was following my instincts, not trying to be somebody else, was powerful. And it takes time, it takes practice, but I have found that you can't stand out if you're trying to fit in. So, the journey, the discovery, is owning my bold, being myself, and sometimes that works better than others, but all said and done, nobody can do me the way I can do me.
Well, I feel like I need to just repeat that for everyone in the room. Nobody can do me like I can do me, which is so true and such a powerful statement to make, and to remind us to really tap into our authenticity and those instincts that we know are going to propel us forward. It was a small move, but a bold move that you took.
And when I talk about the discovery, I by no means did it all by myself. If it hadn't been for mentors and girlfriends and conversations along the way, and so it's not only reminding ourselves, but we have to remind each other.
So I feel like you know what I'm about to ask next, because that idea around mentorship and sponsorship and people who are going to help propel you forward, because it does take a team of people, whether we know people are on our team or not, because we can have people who are speaking our names when we don't even know it. So I'd love to explore that a little bit, because you also mentioned something in your first answer where you said, well, if they believe I should be there, then I should be there. So talk to me about the importance of mentorship and sponsorship and advocacy, and how that's helped you in your career, but also what does that look like now as you are an executive and how you tap into that?
I was very fortunate to have some great mentors early on who invested time in me and were also great role models. And I recognize not everyone has a role model, but you can always learn from those around you. So there were certainly instances where I had to basically make a collage, if you will. And I've learned over time, you can learn and should learn from everybody. Even if someone is perhaps not the best or your favorite manager, if they are where you aspire to be in the organization, then they must have done something really well. So you learn from that. It doesn't mean you have to emulate them. So throughout my career, in addition to mentors, I looked at people who had achieved what I was aspiring to do. and looked for what have they done well, and then how can I do it well? And it might not be identical.
I love that you give that caveat of we don't have to emulate everything, but learn from those who went before us, and then also add your own flavor to it, or
Always.
as a friend of mine would say, add your own razzle dazzle to how you're going to actually show up as your authentic self once you get to that place. I think that's a great reminder for us all. I do want to take a moment to acknowledge just how rare it is for us to see women of color in the C-suite and in roles that have as much impact and influence. We talked earlier that we're seeing this change, we're seeing the landscape change, but we're not quite what we would call there yet. And in fact, in a 2022 report by McKinsey that really looked at women in the workplace, they noted that women of color only account for 4% of C-suite leaders. 4%. You would think that by now, that percentage would be a little bit greater. However, we're grateful for when we do see women like you who have broken those barriers and are in the C-suite. So what would you say were some of the contributors to your being able to break those barriers that some women of color are still attempting to do and that we know they'll do in the future?
Thinking about inclusive excellence, the excellence component, making sure you understand your organization's priorities and how you impact those, and how you can help others also contribute. I firmly believe that our success, it comes from how we help others succeed. And sometimes that's hard to remember, particularly when you feel you don't always know if someone has your back, so then you're wondering, where, when, and how am I going to find and devote the energy to have someone else's back? But you have to remember, why are you part of the enterprise? You're there to contribute to the success. We are all more successful together. So thinking about your role, not only are you going to succeed, but contribute to the success of others. It starts there. Coming back to authenticity, if we can't bring our full selves to the role, then I think we're actually shortchanging the organization that is compensating us. When we interview, they are hiring everything that we say that we can bring to the party, that we will contribute. If we then don't bring everything that we can to the enterprise, we're shortchanging the enterprise, but more importantly, we're shortchanging ourselves. So success is when you can embrace and understand your talents, your purpose, and ideally do that with an organization with which you have shared values. I couldn't be happier that I found that along the way, but really a bullseye with Mary Kay and the culture.
That's awesome. And the way that you described being able to show the value that you're bringing to help others succeed is truly a cornerstone of servant leadership. And that's something that we know is paramount to the Mary Kay brand,
Yes.
and also something that you demonstrate on a daily basis, not only in your role at Mary Kay, but through your other roles in the community as too. So thank you for reminding us of that, of how there are times when we put other people's success before ours, it actually propels us even further. So thank you for that. Now, we also know that even as you pursued this path and took the opportunity to help others succeed and looked at what value you could bring to your different organizations, that there may have been some challenging times that you encountered. Can you tell us about a time where you truly had to rely on that internal grit and determination to keep you going and to keep your eye on that North Star that you created for yourself?
Without getting into details, I can think of one situation where the people in the room, particularly the women, were not being respected. And it was so bad that I actually thought I might have to quit in the middle of a meeting. And as I sat in the meeting, I was going through my mind, what am I going to go home? How will I explain to my husband? Not that he would have been upset, but just how do you go to work in the morning, vice president, and then come home at night and say, I walked out of a meeting and quit? But as I sat there, I thought to myself, why would I want to be in a company that is treating women or people with such disrespect? So it was one of those conversations that I said, if he says just one more thing, or if he says that to me, I'm out of here. And then after the fact, also recognizing that I needed to be a voice for some of the other women and how they were treated. And again, knowing I didn't know what the consequences were going to be, but at the same time, I thought, A, why would I compromise myself to be part of an organization and a culture that is opposite of where my values are? So it was an uncomfortable situation, but I learned from it, and in a small way, I think I contributed to it getting better at that time.
So, there's so much, so much in that answer. There are two things that are really standing out to me, and one, that internal struggle that we as women have, of when do we step away to take care of ourselves versus when do we stay to ensure that we can be a voice for someone else, and that can be a daily battle depending upon the environment you're in. So what would you say was that one thing that made you say, I need to stick this out and show up as a voice instead of leaving?
For me, it comes back to the golden rule and treating others and doing for others what I would hope they would do for me. And there's no guarantee, but when you are one of the few and one of the first, you do carry that opportunity / obligation. If it's meant to be, it's up to me. And you know that if you don't strive to make the situation better, it won't get better. So it is an extra part of the job that I've carried along the way.
Well, and thank you for saying it's an extra part of the job, because a lot of times people don't realize that when you are the first or the only or both, that it is an extra part of the job that you and other women and women of color take on proudly in order to pave that way for other people.
Yeah, and it's important that I clarify that we're talking about my whole career and by far not my experience at Mary Kay. And in fact, Mary Kay Ash, and I think why I so embraced the culture and her values is because she, at her time, also had to deal with not receiving the recognition and respect she deserved as a leader. So it is truly a joy to work at a company that is the way it should be, I'll say, in my opinion. So I want to clarify that as I share experiences, they really are throughout my career at different points in time, and also recognizing companies are only as good as the individuals and leaders that they empower. So I would never critique an organization, but there are experiences that were painful lessons learned.
No, I thank you for that clarification. And I think we all know a little bit about the story of Mary Kay Ash, but I would encourage anyone in this room to really go take a look at that story if you don't know the origins of Mary Kay and what empowerment and transformation, being bold, truly does look like, not only for their customer base, but also for the people who work internally for Mary Kay as well. I love this statement that you made of an organization being only as good as the people that they empower, how does that look for you? What does empowerment of others look like for you as a leader in a rare position? Walk us through that for us.
I think empowerment comes from establishing and investing in a commitment to a culture, to values, and in my current role with Mary Kay, those values have really been from day one. I mentioned the golden rule, making people feel important. My favorite quote, I use it all the time, from Mary Kay Ash: picture an invisible sign around each person's neck that says, "Make me feel important." So simple yet so powerful. And when you empower people to operate by those values, again, golden rule, integrity, making people feel important, then people know what's expected of them, and then they know what they are empowered to do and how to do it. So it's not about authority, but it really is about how you work with and treat and interact with others. Because if that foundation is in place, I believe you can achieve and solve anything.
The idea around not leveraging authority, but what you're leveraging is that relational power
Yes.
that you've built up, not only for yourself, but you're helping create it in other leaders as well.
Thank you, and that's something we talk about. There are cultures that are largely transactional. We are very much a relationship culture. It's true in terms of not only our independent sales force, but as you mentioned before, employees, our partners, the vendors we work with. It really is about relationships and connections.
And the value of those, it can be exponential in not only reaching personal goals, but actually advancing organizational success as well. And I think we're able to see that through the sheer impact that Mary Kay has had over the last 60 years since you're coming up on the 60th anniversary.
60th anniversary. And in this day and age, and I know some people think they invented, the term influencer and so forth, but influence is really comes from relationships, from trusted relationships. And Mary Kay Ash, truly was an influencer. She led by example, and she never really told anyone what to do, but helped them discover each how to be their individual best.
So y'all heard it here first. Influencer is not just a term that came about in the last 5 years. It's been around for a very long time, just in a different in a different capacity. I'd like to explore this idea around showing up and how you choose to lead based on the groups you represent. I always say that we can walk in a room and people are going to know a few things about us as soon as we walk into a room, right?
Yes.
And they can choose to make judgments about who we are as well, just based on what they see. So as a C-suite leader, but also a woman and a woman of color, what are some specific choices you've made in how you show up and choose to lead in the environments that you lead?
I think first and foremost, and one of my favorite books is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Seek first to understand and then be understood. My personal style is to quickly make connections, and I learned how to do that working on commission and retail. You have to make quick connections. So my style of leadership, and it does vary sometimes situationally. I can be, command and control if it's an urgent situation and something needs to happen. I love to collaborate. I love to step back, and just like I want to be empowered and have a lot of room to maneuver, I love to do that with my team and colleagues and give them space. So it comes back to listening, observing, making connections so that you know how best to engage and interact with others. As I said before, people want and need to feel important, and I think that is more true than ever. I think today some of the challenges we see and hear about are because people don't feel valued. And when somebody doesn't feel valued, it's hard for them to help someone else feel valued. So my leadership style, my influence really comes from quickly understanding others and how I can bring value to them, because as I bring value to them, I earn their respect.
And I just want to say that I'm able to see that in so many different ways in how you engage with other people. You take the time to ask questions and to get to know people, and that is a rare thing these days. So thank you. I just want to say thank you for that. We don't see it very often anymore where someone shows that they are more invested in getting to know who you are so that they can better adapt and engage
Yes.
with someone. So it's if you have the opportunity to chat with Sheryl, you'll be answering a lot of questions because
Yes. Yes,
she-
I start with questions. But it's also one of the reasons why I have so loved my affiliation and connection with the TCU community, which really goes back, I think, about 12 years when I was first invited to speak here, and then serving on the president's or the chancellor's advisory council, and then now as a board member, because there's so much to learn. I gained so much from people, so it really is a win-win for me to get to know people.
I love that. And this idea around the continuous learning. Talk to us about the importance of that, of being a lifelong learner, and how it's helped you in your leadership, as well as just how you engage in the environments that you're invited into.
I always thought about new challenges and opportunities through a lens of how can I grow professionally? What will I learn that will be helpful to me, if not in the short term, then at some point in the future? I also find that having a learning mindset, a growth mindset, enables me to take pretty much anything that happens, and as long as I've learned from it, then it's not a complete mistake, it's not a complete failure, as long as I've learned from it. And yes, it takes time, but you do learn in time that the things that didn't go perfectly, they were great lessons learned, and they were probably better learned then at this scale than maybe later at a broader scale. So I really do look at everything through that lens of what did I learn, how did I grow?
I really appreciate you honing in on this idea around learning from the mistakes. We were chatting earlier about giving ourselves grace.
Yes.
And being able to and say it's okay to not achieve perfection. What's a specific example that you have where you were able to look back and say, this did not go so well, things didn't turn out so hot, but I did learn from this, and what was that lesson learned for you?
Without going back in time, it was a lesson about really not asking for help when I needed it. And one of the things that I've learned about myself, I hesitate sometimes to let people know that I need some help, some guidance, maybe don't understand 100% what's expected, because again, I'm high achiever, used to getting it done, making the grades, and so it's uncomfortable to not maybe know what to do and to be not confident to ask for help because you don't know how that's going to be viewed. So you're, kind of mid-senior level, you're thinking I'm supposed to have all the answers. So my mistake was not recognizing when I needed to ask for some help and perhaps who to go to. So I learned a lesson. I learned a lesson, and I share that with others. I share it with my team and my colleagues, and basically say, I'm here to help you be successful, because when you're successful, we're successful. So it's a lesson not only that I took forward, but I've shared with others because I know what it feels like when you want to be viewed as, hey, I'm on it, I'm ready for the next promotion. You don't want to ask for help.
Yeah, sometimes we see that as a sign of, or a lack of credibility if we need to ask questions. But I love that you gave that example because there's actually a study out of Brigham Young University that says that leaders who ask questions are actually exhibiting a higher level of intellectual humility with their
Yes.
teams. So.
And I've also learned that people appreciate being included. The fact that you value their wisdom, their counsel, actually strengthens relationships, and they respect you even more that you took the time and you cared about their perspective. And that was also a very important lesson learned, that it's not a sign of weakness to ask for help, to solicit advice. And it does make you a more influential leader, a more credible leader.
And you brought it full circle because it strengthens those relationships that create the opportunities within the organization to move forward and to move even further than you might have doing it on your own. Thank you for that. So when you think about all that you have experienced, I do want to look a little bit more on the times where other people may have gotten in the way, because that can happen, right? And there are moments where I know I can say for myself that I've experienced when others haven't wanted to see us succeed. So what's your approach to navigating those moments when the challenge may not be the task itself or the lack of resources, but the challenge is actually other people? And how have you pressed forward despite those attempts?
Those are always tricky and difficult. In some instances where I felt somebody was an obstacle, I actually tried my best to step back and think to myself, why might this person be getting, to use your phrase, getting in the way? And rather than thinking about it in terms of they having a problem, they might have a problem with me, I think about it in terms of they might have a problem with themselves in some form or fashion, that they perhaps might be uncertain or uncomfortable, maybe threatened in some way. Sometimes people have said or signaled to me that I might be intimidating and therefore wanting me to dial back. Sometimes that person actually also might be in need of some help and not sure how to do it, what to do about it. So coming back to seeking first to understand, I've looked at those challenges, again, not as perhaps a problem for me, but a problem for them, and maybe there's a way I can help them with their problem. Because I think so often that first temptation is to think, what do I need to do differently, as opposed to what do they need to do differently, and how do I influence that?
I love that. I love that. I don't know what I was going to describe it, so I'll just be honest with you all. I couldn't quite get the phrase that I wanted, but I love what you said in taking that approach, because a lot of times we do focus on ourselves first, and that opportunity might lie in actually helping them uncover what belief or what challenge they might be dealing with in that time.
One of my favorite quotes, and I do attribute it to Mary Kay Ash, could have been said by someone else, but the phrase is, your attitude determines your altitude. And I fully embrace that. And so when I've been challenged with something, we all have choices. We can either think about, wow, I wish this wasn't happening, this shouldn't happen, I didn't deserve it, or we can think about it in terms of, I can make progress through this situation. I can find an opportunity from this obstacle. And so when you focus on the positive, when you focus on what you can influence and control and kind of push to the back burner, you can't ignore it, but you put on the back burner those things that you can't control. You can't control other people's attitudes. You can't control how they feel, but you can control how you feel. You can manage your optimism. And it's not about being Pollyanna-ish. You have to be realistic, but you can take that energy and put it toward success, positive progress.
Thank you for that reminder. And we've seen how your approach in that way and adjusting your attitude has truly created this opportunity for you to continue to rise. So we see how that's been put to practice and how that's worked. So thank you for sharing your perspective on that.
Thanks.
I'd like to hear from you in terms of what leaders have inspired you throughout your journey, and what have you seen in them that has influenced how you do show up? So we talked about the challenges, but what are those positive moments and people that you've encountered?
Oh, I hesitate to name names because I feel like I'm gonna leave important people out. I'll start with family members, people like my grandmother, who herself was very entrepreneurial, fashion-minded. My mother, who just warm and giving. Everyone always knew they had a spot at her table and a pillow on the couch when they needed it. My mother was an English major, so my love of writing and language, I think, was influenced by her. My dad was a scientist and also a professor. Professionally, I had, again, wonderful mentors throughout Harvard Business School. I met James Cash when I was at Harvard Business School. It's so great to reconnect with him recently. I've learned a lot from Chancellor Boschini and watching how he leads, watching how he listens, watching how he helps others embrace change, and how he leads in a very inclusive manner. And certainly, by no means least, all that I have learned about Mary Kay Ash, not only through her writings, it's still a family-owned company, so getting to work with her grandson, who is now our chief executive officer, having, over the last 14 years, talked with so many women who knew Mary Kay Ash personally, couldn't have been a better teacher for me and mentor through her teachings than Mary Kay Ash. So yeah.
Thank you. And I know that can be a hard question to answer when there have been so many people who have influenced you, but thank you for sharing that list. At some point, I thought you were talking about my own family as you were talking about some of the things that and how your family showed up for other people. Is we have some similar experiences there. I would like to understand what advice you would give to people sitting in the audience as they are navigating their own professional journeys. What would you say? What advice would you give them in how they should pursue that professional path? And if we think back to some of the conversation we had earlier, how they should pursue that professional path, and what are some of the things they should look out for as they're determining what their next steps will be in their growth as a professional and as a leader?
First and foremost, I would encourage everyone to remember that you are great, that you are capable of great things, that we are each uniquely designed with unique gifts and talents, and that, again, is very much on purpose. Sometimes, and we talked earlier about comparison being the thief of confidence and the thief of joy, and we so often want to compare ourselves, compare our progress to someone, and as we know, wasn't Oprah when she woke up. Beyonce isn't Beyonce when she wakes up. But we shouldn't compare someone's grand finale to our dress rehearsal, so to speak. The other thing, I think, following passions, I initially followed a passion for design and fashion, which led to business and ultimately led to the work that I get to do now. So I think following your passion, learning along the way, and as part of that, paying attention, tuning into when and where and how do you feel you're bringing your full self to a situation, because those are typically the opportunities that you are destined to impact and be a part of. So as I was sharing with some others, thinking about where did I feel I could be my full, complete self, and when you recognize that feeling, own it, embrace it, and know that that's you telling you how to do you.
Oh man, okay. So in case y'all didn't catch what Sheryl said, we should not compare our dress rehearsal to someone else's grand finale. If you did not write that down, write it down now. Write it on your mirror, in the bathroom, whatever you need to do in order to remember that, because there's so many times where we can think that we haven't progressed, that we haven't succeeded, we haven't reached goals, when actually if we look behind us, we've come so far. But if we're comparing ourselves to others, then we're never going to see the progress we've actually made.
And that progress and that pace, it's unique to everyone. Mary Kay Ash, she was a widowed grandmother, middle-aged. She didn't like to tell her age, so I'm not going to tell her age. And look what she created, a legacy that has enhanced and enriched the lives of millions of women over the last 60 years. And again, middle-aged grandmother, widowed, put her last $5,000 on the line, and look what that turned out to be.
And the impact that she's had not only on you, but so many people.
And their families.
Yes. Around the globe. Just incredible. So I have one last question for you. What would you say are your top 3 core strategies that you follow for turning barriers into breakthroughs?
Ooh, okay. Certainly one of the strategies is to believing that there is a solution, that there's a way out. So when you believe there's a way, you will find a way. And I think it was in Winnie the Pooh that Tigger says, everything is figure-outable. And there are some times when I'm just stuck, but I say to myself, there's a solution. You have to think about it. You might have to think about it very differently, but the power of belief, and people have often described that my trait of resilience. But I do believe pretty much everything can be addressed. The other thing that, and again, it took some time, but also that I don't have to do everything by myself. So I'm much better now of thinking about who else might be able to help me with this, who else will it be helpful to even talk to about something. Because often in the act of talking, I come up with my best ideas. So a lot of times we have the answers, but we need to talk and share with someone else for it to come out. So that's something I've learned to tap into. I think the third thing, and maybe this is somewhat related to the first, but I also love the quote, in the end, everything will be okay, and if it's not okay, it's not the end. And it's this notion of we will make it through whatever, and that we are not given more than we can handle.
Thank you for that. I mean, what an incredible way to wrap up this conversation, to share with us that through perseverance, through the seeking out of others, And at the end of the day, that strong belief that everything is figure-outable.
Yes.
We will find a way. What a way to wrap that up, to show us that truly barriers can turn into breakthroughs if we choose to follow those steps. I just want to personally thank you for this conversation. You have been such a huge part of the TCU fabric for the last 12 years. So you might not have a degree that says TCU, but you are an alum of this university as far as
Thank you.
as far as I'm concerned. So thank you so much
Thank you.
for everything
And
that you do.
Thank you, Tracy. It's been delightful to share with you. I'm grateful.
Thank you so much. So with that, I will turn it over to David. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's the first time I heard a Winnie the Pooh quote in a business conversation, so that was special. Thank you guys again. Can you give them, please, another hand applause? Truly an inspiring conversation. I want to thank Dean Richardson. I want to thank Ann in the Office of Inclusive Excellence. If you guys want to learn and hear more about that, we will be outside and can talk. And most importantly, because of Ms. Atkins-Green's request, we have a TCU art gallery outside where all of the art is curated by actual TCU students. So please go outside and check that out as long as our reception. Thank you, guys.
Some of the artists are here, which
They
is
are
even
here.
more special.
And this is a business school, so everything is for sale, right? So please negotiate accordingly. All right, you guys have a good night.